Our speaker today is Brenden Hill. He is in charge of, he's, I guess, actually the coordinator of NIL at San Diego State University. If you don't know what that is, which most of us really don't understand the whole process, he's going to explain it to us today. So please welcome Brenden.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you all for having me. Thank you for being here. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us today. So I also want to acknowledge Caroline Ripley from Aztec Club joining us here today. For a quick show of hands, anyone who knows what name, image, and likeness is, can you raise your hand? All right, awesome. All right, so I'll get into that. Something really quick about that video also, I'm a graduate of Virginia Tech, and we have, way back east, we have our motto, our university motto is Ut Prosum. It's Latin for that I may serve. So that video touched me. What you all do in the community really has made an impact on me today. So I just wanted to say that because service is something that's ingrained in me as well, from 3,000 miles away. So just a quick highlight of who I am. Really big in the family. I have two sons, 6-month-old named Miles and a 15-year-old stepson named Jalen. Can you guys still hear me well?
Yes.
Yep. Thanks. All right, I'm a former student athlete. I played football at Virginia Tech for Hall of Fame football coach Frank Beamer. I worked for the NBA, worked with the NBA and NFL for some time down in Washington, D.C. With the Wizards and the Redskins there. I'm new to California. I've only been here for 7 months. I had never been to San Diego until I came for my interview, and the rest is history. That's why I'm with you today.
Welcome to Encinitas.
Thank you.
It doesn't rain like this.
No, I was going to say.
Well, I got here in June, so it was May gray, June gloom, and I was wondering what happened. So, exactly. But I love great food and I love traveling. That chili was awesome today, so compliments to that. And this is my first Rotary, so once again, thank you all for the warm welcome and hospitality. Dennis, thank you again for having me. Wouldn't be a presentation without a quick table of contents, overview of what we're going to talk about. First, what is NIL, what our approach to NIL is, how to do NIL challenges, some of our success at San Diego State. We're going to talk about collectives, the future of NIL, and then I'll just wrap it up. So, and at any point, if you have any questions or want me to expand on something, please feel free to ask. So NIL, fundamentally, we all have a name, an image, and a likeness. It dates back to the right to publicity. So the example I always use with families and student athletes is if we were out at a restaurant and someone were filming a movie, they would have to get us to sign a release of our name, our image, and our likeness for us to be included in that movie, or they would have to pay us in exchange for that. So we all have a name, image, and likeness. It's just due to college athletics. NCAA definition of what it is an activity that involves the use of an individual's name, image, or likeness for commercial or promotional purposes. All right? And what is work? All right, so this is a big one. NIL is technically defined as work. So there's international students, because they're on visa status, are not allowed to necessarily participate in name, image, and likeness. So NIL is technically performing a service or work. That's kind of the standard for what NIL is, and it has to have a quid pro quo, something for something, right? You can't get something for nothing. We can't pay a student athlete $500 just for being in our presence, right? They have to do some type of activity, and I'll get into what some of those activities are in a second. So at San Diego State, my role is fairly new. I'm a department of one. I don't have a ton of resources. I have some interns that are interested in this, but I report directly to our athletic director and our other leadership. But I've created a vision for our program to build a robust NIL ecosystem that supports a positive student athlete experience at San Diego State by connecting our student athletes with resources and creating values for all participants, right? So fundamentally, and we'll get into the misinformation in a second, but student athletes, if you've ever attended college. For those of you who have, it's a great experience. You meet potentially your spouse in college, right? So we really, student athletes aren't immune to that experience. We want to create a great experience for them. They're oftentimes doing the workload of being a student and then doing the workload of being an athlete, which means training and eating right and rehabbing and all those types of things. And creating value is important because I think that's what brings people back. So our mission is we exist to support the recruitment and retention of student athletes as they build their personal brand at San Diego State. This is where student athlete development meets business development. So we have a great student athlete development program at San Diego State called Aztec Going Pro. Our student athletes actually take a life skills class. So they're in a freshman class, a sophomore class, a junior class, a senior class, and it kind of builds on itself, where they learn everything from sexual violence to community service to, you name it, financial literacy, any life skill you can think of. We actually have a 4-credit class that through our athletic department that our student athletes take. So that's what student athlete development is, and business development is something I feel like I'm doing right now. We take a holistic approach to NIL that focuses on transferable skills, connectivity, and empowerment. Dennis, as he wants me to call him, we met probably 6 months ago when I first got here. Every time I see him, we talk, we hit it off. That's the connectivity of my role and what we do, and like I said, grateful to be here. So, how to NIL, all right? So these are the 3, if I had to sum it up, these are the 3 ways people do name, image, and likeness. Schools do name, image, and likeness. Number 1 would be a collective, all right? A collective is essentially a booster club, all right? If you think of, the way I always explain it is, if you have sons, daughters, or grandchildren, and their baseball team needs to raise money to go on a trip, or for new uniforms. You're gonna get out, you're gonna car wash, you're gonna fundraise, you're gonna do all that sort of stuff. That's essentially what a collective is. So if you ever hear anyone refer to a collective, they're essentially talking about a booster club. Their job is to leverage their network and the university supporters to pool resources, both financially and in kind. I think that's an important one to stop on. In kind, most people think NIL has to be money all the time, but free food, something that is a barter for our student athletes goes a long way. It doesn't have to be a brand new car from Volkswagen, right? It could be, not to put you on the hook.
It can be.
It could be. It could be, but it doesn't have to be.
It should be.
All right, should be. All right. But they work directly with student athletes, are responsible for NCAA rules, including they're prohibited from talking to future student athletes. So if that student athlete is not enrolled at the institution that they support, they could get in trouble. You've seen recently in the news, Florida State and Florida are both in trouble because they were involved with prospective student athletes, not the student athletes who were enrolled. And something about that too, the school can end up getting in trouble for the behavior of that booster club, that collective as we call it. All right, the second way, businesses. This is your standard endorsement deal that's been happening since beginning of time, right? Joe Montana, Phillip Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson, anybody you can name, Fernando Tatis, they have endorsement deals. That's fundamentally a business. Often has a line item on their P&L for marketing, right? So they can pay student athletes to endorse their product, whatever that product or service is. Like I said, they can hire a student athlete to promote their product and be a spokesperson or influencer. All right, that's the method we try and do the most. The last method is the fans section. As a supporter of SDSU or student athletes, fans can purchase merchandise, jerseys, t-shirts. They can buy autographs. They can hire student athletes for personal lessons, coaching camps, all that type of stuff, and support the ecosystem. And then they can support a collective or a business. One of the things that I have here, ROI, when a business supports a student athlete, what we try and encourage our 500,000 living alum to do at San Diego State is go support that business, because now that business sees the impact and they are able to get ROI. So that's the advantage to a business supporting our student athletes. through NIL, and that's how our fans can support them. But fundamentally, we do have merchandise stores up for our student athletes, so fans can buy their favorite student athletes jersey, t-shirt with their name on it, all that good stuff. All right, some challenges in those categories. ROI for donors, right? So you hear sometimes people will come to a donor for a collective and they'll say, hey, would you mind making a donation? Well, I don't mind making a donation one time, but you got to give me some type of value or some ROI there, right? I don't want to, no one here I don't think likes lighting money on fire. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges is how do they give value to donors? ROI could also mean wins. You see that if I'm contributing to this booster club, well, I want to see the product get better, right? I want to see the team win. If we aren't winning, I probably won't give money in the future. They're volunteer organizations. They usually don't have staff. So people are working hard to do this type of stuff, and they aren't necessarily always paid for it. NCAA rules can be a challenge, and it being a new industry can be a challenge. Collectives have gotten the worst rap out of all of NIL activity. But their whole goal is to support and try and retain and recruit talent to the school, to represent the school athletically. A lot of people in athletics say sports are the front porch to the university. The national championship run for San Diego State was worth millions, I think hundreds of millions of dollars to San Diego State in kind value, right? So athletics are important to attracting world-class student talent, faculty talent, all those types of things. From a business perspective, who do I work with, right? I have a business that could hire a student athlete. How do I choose that student athlete? That can be a challenge. How much do I pay that person? That can be a challenge. What are the deliverables or activations like? Are they gonna show up at my restaurant for an hour and meet and greet with people? So how do I do it? How do I get them into a contract? And then I put fake news here because every day you see a headline that's sensationalized, right? We all have to remember that media's job is to sell ads or papers or whatever, so they're always going to create some type of clickbait, sensationalized headlines sometimes around NIL because they just want you to click on it. But 9 times out of 10, not to get into political views here, but it's fake news, all right? So take it with a grain of salt. Lastly, some challenges to fans. Once again, fake news. If I keep hearing about, this athlete got $1 million to play quarterback or a new car or a new house or this, I'm just like, I'll sit this one out, right? Like for fans, most fans. Noise, like I said, it creates paralysis where people don't want to do anything. They don't want to participate. Discretionary income to spend on it is a challenge, right? People work hard for their money. How they contribute it is important. Once again, the ROI factor and new technology is a challenge because a lot of these NIL activities have new technology that are facilitating it. And one thing, I don't know if I have it in here, I can't remember, but that I just hit on, our student athletes aren't immune to the cost of living in San Diego. It's one of the most expensive cities to live in the world, and they aren't usually able to have a job. So this is a way that they can offset some of their cost of living expenses. We aren't trying to help our student athletes become rich. We're trying to give them life skills, transferable skills, while also offsetting some of their cost of living burden. All right? So some of our success, some of those things we were talking about. Merchandise, as you see here, we have some cool jerseys, merchandise. We have a big installation we have one bookstore on campus at San Diego State. This is one of the first projects I worked on when I got here last summer. Basically, anyone and everyone who visits our campus, whether that's a student, a faculty, anyone, they'll most likely stop by the bookstore, and in our opinion, that's how strongly we feel about name, image, and likeness, is that not only will you see an advertisement for it, but you'll have a QR code that will take you to some of these things here. This build a brand slide here, that's kind of a slogan that we have. We have a soccer player endorsing a product. We have Lamont Butler and Matt Bradley doing an activation for Toyota. Sorry. And then Mr. Cook, I should have put yours up there. You've been very active with Volkswagen and working with Aztec NIL, one of our collectives, and having some of our student athletes I missed that one. I should have put that one on there, but
Yeah.
Mr. Cook, Dennis says he would want me to call him. He's been great supporting our student athletes. That's exactly why I'm here today. But he's had student athletes do commercials for his company, and the student athletes show up. They do a great job, and then he's able to push that out to his all his clientele with the association to San Diego State. So thank you again, Dennis, for your support of NIL, and I won't miss that on my next presentation. A collective, all right, so our two collectives, we just made an announcement today. Actually, Aztec Link was founded by J.R. Tover. He's a former football player at San Diego State. He's a Hall of Fame player at San Diego State. He and Mike Coleman, Mike Coleman spent 30 years at Qualcomm. They are with Aztec Link. We just made an announcement. They're an official partner of San Diego State. So what that means is now they have access to certain things that the NCAA would normally not allow them to have access to, like the arena or promotions in game, different things like that. So they can promote Aztec Link to all of our fans and things like that. But Aztec Link, you can read a little bit about their mission. Their mission is they're a for-profit company. They don't take a salary or anything, but that's just how they're set up. Their goal is to connect student athletes to businesses in the community. They just did La Jolla, someone from La Jolla is here. They just did had 4 of our baseball players go out to the La Jolla Youth League baseball and run a camp for the day. And that was a great experience for both those young kids and also our student athletes. So Aztec Link is one collective that works primarily with football, but all of our sports except for men's and women's basketball. Mesa Foundation is a non-profit collective. So they give their donors a write-off. You can get a tax deduction that's not marketing related through Mesa Foundation. Their mission is more community-driven, service-driven. So ALS is really important to Coach Dutcher, Coach Fisher, our basketball program, because of his son, Mark Fisher. Our ALS team, or the Mesa ALS team that consisted of the collective and the foundation and all their supporters, was the largest fundraiser in this year's ALS Walk for ALS. So that's the power of student athletes leveraging their name, image, and likeness to raise awareness for causes. So this is how Mesa is set up. They're led by Jeff Smith. He's an SDSU alum, and they get out in the community. They've done camps at Camp Pendleton for children of military families and different things like that. So if you have any community events that you would love student athletes to join, Mesa Foundation would be who you would want to partner with there. All right, so where are we headed? That was a lot. Anybody have any questions or anything so far? Hopefully I'm not losing you all.
I have a question. So is Sons of Montezuma, are they just a private entity, or are they part of this?
They're part of the ecosystem, so I'll refer to ecosystem a lot, but they are a merchandise vendor or a media company. They are a part of it, but they're not an official partner yet. But I do talk to Mateo and their group a lot. They support our student athletes, so if anyone has any money or resources or something for our student athletes, we appreciate it. So we do support Sons of Montezuma.
Can you give me just a quick short history of how long this has been going on?
Yes.
As far as
NIL?
athletes being able to get.
Yep, so since 2021. So funny story, I was actually part of a class action lawsuit that I didn't realize I was a part of at the time. So I got a note in the mail back in like 2007 that said, hey, you're part of a class action lawsuit. I just graduated college. You've been awarded something. I thought it was a joke. I threw the piece of paper away. It was like $3,000 or something like that. But I was a part of Bill Russell, Ed O'Bannon, who played at UCLA, Oscar Robinson. All these former athletes ended up suing the NCAA and EA Sports, the video game company, back in 2014 because they were selling their name, image, and likeness in a video game without paying the student athletes and the former players. So 2014 is when they went to court as part of the class action lawsuit. It didn't get adjudicated fully until about 2020. And then the payouts, happened, and basically the courts and the NCAA saw the writing on the wall and they said, hey, we have to remove this restriction. It used to be a restriction up until 2021 that student athletes were not able to monetize their name, image, and likeness. So the school could sell as many jerseys as they want, and no one was paying, those student athletes for the sale of their jerseys. Another big conversation around athletics is TV contracts and TV money. So the student athletes, most people, raise your hand if you go to a sporting event to see the coach. We're there to see the student athletes compete at a high level, right? You didn't go to the Rose Bowl to watch Coach Harbaugh. Great that he's there, love what he does, right? But you want to see, JJ McCartney and those guys do what they do. So I think that's where our model, just from an NCAA level, is going through a lot right now in the courts and Congress and different things like that, is everyone's trying to right size this. Title IX is another, I'm not going to call it, it's not an issue. Title IX is another challenge to NIL because you have to provide equal access, right? So we can't just pay the football and men's basketball team a bunch of money and then forget about the other sports, right? The women's sports and different things like that. So that's kind of the format. But 2021, the NCAA saw the writing on the wall. The former president is now gone. The former president of the NCAA, who kind of sat on his hands and watched all this transpire, he's out. We have a new president, Charlie Baker. He was the former governor of Massachusetts. So we brought in a politician to help us fix it. We'll see how well that goes, but he has a lot of connections, and he was a former student athlete himself. So, like I said, it's not perfect right now, but we're working with the system that we have. So,
you hear about these guys playing in the NCAA, and they go, well, he was a quarterback for Texas last year. They're talking about state or something, and he moves. San Diego State's got that stud, on the basketball team, the big center.
Okay,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The Gonzaga just goes, we're going to offer you a 500 Mercedes instead of the Volkswagen. I mean, does it play like?
I prefer Volkswagen.
Oh, no.
Thank you,
Brenden. They're offering more. They're going, dude, you don't want to
So-
see the state. We're going to offer you way more money.
So I'll give you a funny story. So I left this out, but I started a collective. That's kind of how I got into all this. But I started a collective at Virginia Tech. Once again, was a volunteer. That's why I realized I needed to get into a full-time position somewhere. But we offered a student athlete as part. He was an enrolled student athlete, so it was compliant. We offered him a couple $100,000 through the collective. It's outrageous. I was disappointed. It wasn't my money. It was the pooled money, right, from donors and different things. He had been at the university for 5 years. He still decided to leave to go to Notre Dame because it was Notre Dame, right? He still felt like I had done everything I could do here, and I want to move on to maybe brighter lights in theory, right? So student athletes choose their university, like I said, that's a pretty significant offer. Notre Dame didn't necessarily offer them more money, but the other intangible, intrinsic benefits that came along with Notre Dame, whether that be an MBA from Notre Dame or, the connections from Notre Dame are still of value, but it's always been competitive. And what my boss says is it's always been the haves and have-nots, right? Like, so if a student athlete were to go on a visit to Michigan and they seat 100,000 people, well, Snapdragon seats 35,000. We'll never be able, like, our stadiums are different. So it's not always money that makes the difference. It could be Jordan Brand versus Reebok. It could be, proximity to home. I don't want to live, so student athletes don't always make decisions because of the money, but that's what we hear about. That's the fake news piece of it. But
So it is competitive.
but everything is competitive. It is kind of my point. It's not just about the NIL money. NIL is a piece of it. We have to be competitive, but in my opinion, there's a way. We lost a basketball player to, in theory, a bigger school, a Power 5 school. That maybe if we had a little more resources for that player, he might have stayed. But it's not. But that player also had got his degree, and my motto, or I think the way I look at it is, wherever you go, get your degree. After you get your degree, have at it. Move around all you want. But what the trouble with all this transfer portal stuff or things that you hear is the coaches move pretty frequently. Like, so you'll see just the domino effect of, the coach from Washington football goes to Alabama to backfill Nick Saban. Well, who backfill at Washington? Well, they take the coach from Arizona. Okay, who backfill at Arizona? The coach from San Jose State. Well, who backfill San Jose State? The coach that was at so it's, if the coaches can move that quickly, the student athletes in theory should be able to move just as quickly.
Since this is the first time anybody's filled this position, how did you prioritize? This seems like the Wild West out there.
Yeah.
How did you prioritize what you were gonna take on first, especially with one person doing it?
So for me, I always tell people I start with our student athletes. That's like fundamental who I work with is our student athletes, and then I work my way out from there. But for me, this is why I'm here today, is to spread the gospel, so to speak, about NIL and how it works, because there is a lot of misinformation. But I had done it before because I started a collective. So I knew I had been through that process before, and now, even though I'm internal, I still work with our collective, so I understand what they need and how they think, and I also understand what the institution needs. But really what you need is adoption. You need people to understand what is NIL, how can I do NIL, how can I support. It's not a whole football team getting pickup trucks. It can be a support of, we just had baseball and softball players go out to the new Smash Burger in UTC at their grand opening and like hang out and smash burgers, and they got a $100 gift card for free food. They showed up, they enjoyed it. So it's getting information out.
So how will they know at the end of the year that you did a good job?
That's a great question. Activity, I would say, and that's the beauty of our department, is we really have a really great, JD Wicker is a great athletic director. I have a ton of autonomy, but we have meetings and I was joking with somebody before we started, we hadn't met as a leadership group in probably about 6 weeks. So I got in there, I don't get to talk to people about NIL much, so I got in there and my agenda was like 2 pages because I just wanted to espouse everything I had been working on and thinking of. But I think my goal is connecting student athletes with resources. If our student athletes are getting free food or financial help, or they're selling merchandise, I think I left this off there, I might have put it on there, but we were top 10 in the country in merchandise sales through our vendors. So we were up there with Michigan, Ohio State, in merchandise, and we're SDSU, right? And that's without people really understanding it. So my goal is, if we have 500,000 living alum and supporters in the greater San Diego area, if we can tell our story more and get people to understand that they don't have to just light money on fire, they can actually buy a little jersey for their son, daughter, grandchild, and that money will help a student athlete. To me, that's where the value is. So, and did you have a question?
I was just curious how with this transfer portal stuff, like a kid comes in, a freshman, like say he enrolls in December,
Yeah.
like a big 5-star football player, and he gets some sort of money, right, through the NIL, and he decides to transfer. Is that money just cut off from him, and he's done, he can't collect? Just take it back, or how's it all work?
So usually the student athletes, most contracts are usually like in the fall. So for football at least, so it may last through the fall, through the season. And once the season is over, they'll have a renewal or they can renegotiate. But if they get kicked off the team, we put like a disparagement clause in our contract. So if the student athlete did anything to disparage the brand, the reputation of the business, their money could get cut off that way as well. But fundamentally, it runs its course through a season, and then the student athlete can renegotiate. Unfortunately, the transfer portal is a lot of leverage, right? If I have a great season, I can say, hey coach, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna pay me, or I'm gonna hop in this portal and go make more money somewhere else potentially? So it is a challenge, but where we're headed, I'll just hit on this. I don't know how we're doing on time, but institutional involvement is to me the one key that may come to play in the fall. If I had a crystal ball, where right now I cannot negotiate on behalf of our student athletes. I can only make them aware of an opportunity. I can't say, hey, you're getting paid, you need to make more. We will be able to become more involved, and the goal of that is to try and eliminate and make a little more control. We'll be able to talk to a student athlete proactively about what they need to stay at a school, whereas right now we can't even have those conversations. But in conclusion, how can you help? You can support a collective, you can purchase merchandise, you can support brands who support SDSU. I'm assuming this is a pro SDSU room. You can hire student athletes for camps, things like that. You can support Aztec going pro or Aztec Club. Connect with Caroline on that. You can spread the word. You know, I hope there's 30 people in this room. I hope you all, next time name, image, likeness comes up, you tell them about this conversation. We also have a website, aztecnil.com. It has a ton of information on there. Why your help is needed. Like I said, cost of living, professional development for our student athletes. They learn a lot about entrepreneurship, taxes, all these sorts of things through name, image, and likeness. It's not just, like I said, it's not just making money for doing nothing. Pride in the Aztec advantage, our supporters are our advantage, and you feel competitive teams. So just in closing, we had some student athletes transfer out on our football team, and I'll just name off some of the schools they ended up at: University of Washington, University of Florida, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, TCU. They ended up at some pretty substantial schools, right? So if we can try and support them, like I said, just a little help with their rent, a little help with their food, that may be the difference along with living in beautiful America's finest city, right? They may not want to go move to Norman, Oklahoma. No offense to anyone in Oklahoma, right? But yeah, so thank you, and I appreciate you guys.